Contractors' Secret Weapon weekly podcast with your hosts, Dave Negri. This program is dedicated to helping contractors, remodelers, painters, roofers, roof cleaners, and business owners in the construction industry gain an unfair advantage over the competition. This program supplies you with information that the competition doesn't even know exists. This session brought to you by ContractorsSecretWeapon.com.
Today I have a unique guest, Terry Ogburn, and I don't want to go into a double preview with Terry. I just wanted to get on in the beginning and let you know that stay to the end, because Terry has a free offer for you guys, and I got an opportunity to take advantage of that probably about 2 weeks ago. So just stick around to the end and see what he's got for you as an offer for free. It will really help your business because it helped me set some things in order. And so just look out for that free offer in the end. Now let's get into the program. Hey, this is Dave Negri with Contractors' Secret Weapon, and today I have Terry Ogburn. And actually we found out that we live pretty close to each other, and we're still doing an interview via Skype. So let me tell you about Terry. Terry is a renowned owner and lead business coach of Ogburn Business Solutions. His proprietary coaching system and personal devotion to the development of others has contributed to the success of hundreds of small to large business ventures. And so Terry started out like many of us. He had a business career in 1979. He invested his last $118.42 to start an air conditioning service business, and at that time he had no car or no truck. That seems to be a good thing to have sometimes, a car or a truck. And he did have the knowledge and the ability to build relationships, which makes business grow. And 10 years later, he developed his own business success program based on the experience and teachings of his favorite business books. And along the way, Terry has done a tremendous amount of things, but it brought him back. All the things that he's done, that has brought him back in 2005 to his passion of helping independent entrepreneurs and small business owners plan and launch and develop their businesses. So, Terry, I just want to thank you so much for being with us today and being willing and able to share your success and fun experiences with us.
Well, thank you so much, Dave, for having me on your show as well. And you have quite a career as well. So I'm proud to be here and proud to help your listeners in any way I can.
Awesome. So I was really intrigued by you starting your business, like many of us, with nothing. And within 10 years, you took it to a completely different level that most guys just dream about, of selling their business and doing something else with their life. And you chose another business. But I would really like to talk about some of the things that you did, because I know a lot of guys in business think about, is there anything better, or can I do something more? I want more business. How did you approach all that as you went? Of course, nothing went right in the beginning, did it?
No, it was funny. It was like, I guess, a lot of businesses. You start out with one vision, and then you think it's going to go one way, and then all of a sudden things happen, and you have to deviate from your original vision. But yeah, very quickly I was fired out of the car business, and I'd been very successful at selling cars. And so I was apartment complex that I was living in went condo, and they had a broken furnace duct, and I knew how to repair that duct, obviously. And so I figured I'd just earn some money while I was hanging around there at the condos. And with no car, well, in the car business, you're furnished a car, and so I figured I need to make some money, get a car, and things like that. So, but one of my first mentors was Jim Foxworthy, and Jim Foxworthy was the regional manager, regional president for IBM, and he bought a condo, and I was able to fix him, and so we just got to chatting. So that's how it all really got started, was him sharing with me that I had to do a lot different things than what I was doing right then if I was really going to be successful.
Well, that's awesome. So you went from one thing to another. I mean, within this business, and you learned, of course, to like many of us, become the chief cook and bottle washer, to doing everything. And what helped you originally get to the next level? Was it? No, go ahead. I'm not going to ask.
Oh,
yeah.
My apologies. I guess ambition. I was always an ambitious little kid. My dad was Air Force and career Air Force, and so we were always encouraged to think outside the box. And I was on I had a paper route, and I came to him with the idea I wanted a paper route, and he said, "Well, let's write a business plan about that."
Neat.
And so I'm 10 years old, so I had to figure out how many houses, how many houses I was going to serve, and how much money I was going to make off each, week, and how long it would take me to pay back the money type thing, and that was good education. And then I wanted a lawnmower business, same kind of thing happened. And the same thing happened when I was in the air conditioning business. I started forecasting and looking and did some advertising, and then did buy a truck, and then started advertising, started moving outside of the community, the condo community, and then got involved with meeting people. And then, of course, you have startup. Most of your people have startup. You have the ups and downs. And then, as I was sharing with you earlier, there was one time came when I had enough money to make payroll, and or pay the phone bill. And in an air conditioning business, your phone book is your lifeblood, because at that time nobody, there was the only way you did was try to open the phone book, and so you had to. So I called him in and I just said, "Guys, it's your money, and you tell me what you want to do with it." And so we kind of negotiated a deal, and some people got a little $25 here and there. We kind of used up the money to make sure we got the phone bill paid, and everybody got some money. And I had money coming in from the next week, but we've all been there, I think, in business and somewhere. And I think it's when the toughest times is when you really, knuckle down and figure out how to get to the other side. And I think a lot of businesses get to that tough point, and they're afraid to move forward or go out on the limb or do some things that they should trust their gut, I guess. So
Right.
that's what I did. I just pushed forward, and now my attitude is, if it's getting dark, it must be something good coming. So I just push further, just push a little harder.
My philosophy has always been, fail fast and move forward.
Exactly. And I think there's a spirit that comes into it. I think you have to have an entrepreneurial spirit too, whereby you seek knowledge, or you go after books. Like you mentioned that I have 4 books that I basically have created a recipe for success. And those 4 books were what introduced from networking and meeting people. And they said, well, read this book. So I read this book. And, then you go and follow that stuff. most people read the book. They agree with some of the philosophies inside the book, but they never implement the strategies. Well, I just, I guess because my upbringing with my dad, you implemented things, you read it and you did it, whatever. And so I started doing these things. And then next thing I thought, well, this piece here works really well. And, and company, small companies, they don't think about job descriptions,
Right.
And they say, well, I'm too small for job descriptions. The myths point to them is that there's 14 different positions, and you got to figure out what the responsibilities are for those positions, and then there's affirmations, and there's things that that make you get better at what you're doing. So, and then you have to create some habits, and good habits, and there's some bad ones out there. So
it takes longer to create a new habit than it does to reestablish a bad one.
Okay. A habit takes 21 days consecutively, and the problem is that most people will do it for about 14 days and then give up on it and then start it back up and back and forth, and they never ever get 21 in a row.
Yeah, they never get past the old habit.
And another thing too, that a mistake that early mistake that I made, and I think this is pretty common in business, because there's really no magic bullets out there. But a mistake is past accounting, meaning that I used to wait for my P&L to come in. Because you hire an accountant, yes. And you wait for your P&L to come in because you're excited to see what you did, and you get it about the 15th or the 20th of the month, and I'd lost money. Yes. And you go, well, there's another 15 or 20 days you've been losing money and you didn't know where to fix it. So
I'm not laughing at you because I've been there. It's like I think one of the biggest fallacies that we have in business is that we look to the accountant who is dealing in the past to show us where we should be moving in the future, and it's telling us the mistakes we made, and we're 15 to 30 days behind. So, like you're saying, I'm devastated because I've lost money, and this really P&L is just not really what I was. There's another. You need to create other dashboards to help you figure out, the positive sides. I remember years ago there was this one guy who had owned a car dealership, and he did a lot of speaking engagements throughout the United States. And he said, I can run my whole business by this sheet of paper, and he held it up, and he said, this is my dashboard to my business. It has all the numbers. And he says, if this number is off, I know who to call and say, you need to do this. If this number is off, I need to know who to call in my team and say, this is off and this is where you need to work on. So he was getting a daily dose of, he wasn't looking in the past, he was looking at basically in real time.
I had that same little form. Or in my world, it was a little form. It was about a 5.5 by 7 sheet of paper. It told me how many calls I ran. The money, how many calls I ran, how much I did in accounts receivable, how much I did in barter. I did a lot of barter work, and I kept. And then how much I even had my bookkeeper. She would make out the checks. And then they would give them to me in a stack, and then I had somebody else that would total up the bank balance, and we were always negative, Dave. Every day we were negative, right? But what they didn't know was I had the checks that I hadn't released yet,
right?
So I could tally up what hadn't been released yet, and of course we had a positive balance, and but then I got into, now I refer to CPAs as past accounting, because that's what they do. It's hard to find a CPA in today's market or accountant in today's marketplace that understands performance and projections and how to dial those things in. And, I use a lot now when I work with clients is they have to have a pie chart, and they have to know I don't like when one account or one customer will, one client will have one big large piece of pie. If something's over 25% of your business, you should be re-looking at your business or need to bring on some more of the smaller accounts, to protect yourself. So if that big account walks away, and we miss that, we get, it's just easier to handle one account. Well, if it walks out, it's not easy to replace for sure.
I learned that early in my painting contracting business that I had one builder who was 90% of my business, and he stuck me for $50,000.
Yeah.
And I'm going, and from that day, I vowed that no one customer would have more than 25% of my business.
Good advice. And I went on to get a little bit more sophisticated from the standpoint that I created an operations manual because when I got to be, I guess, about 1984, 1985, I decided that I wanted to create an exiting strategy. And so, and I learned that from, being around, some highly influential entrepreneurs. Like one guy, this is just an incredible story. He wanted to move from New York to Florida because he was tired of the cold weather type thing. So he did his research, Dave, and he found out that Tampa Bay area did not have a Heidelberg printing machine anywhere.
Wow.
And so he came down here, opened up a printing company, and because back then it was hard to get four color stuff. Yeah. So he did, and so he lived. His business was like on my way home, and just like a half a mile from where I live. So when I go by there at night, I'd see his car there. So I'd pull in and we'd chat, and I'd sit up on the boxes in his printing company, and he'd be back by the cutter and working and cutting his jobs and stuff. And one of the best pieces of advice he gave me, one day I asked him, I said, Dick, when do you change clothes? Because when I met, he was in a suit, I said, when do you change clothes and come back here and go to work? He says, as soon as I get back from the meeting. And I go, what? And he goes, well, he says, Terry, that you find a pivot point in your business, and that's where you belong. And he says, where I belong is right here, and making sure that every job that I cut, every job that I see, I get a chance to proof it, I get a chance to look at it, the finished product, before it goes out the door. Now, I have trained every one of my staff to come here, and this is my office right here. And he says, you need to find your office, and that's your pivot point. And so I did, and it didn't happen. It wasn't me being in the field.
Good.
Yeah, because I was just like one of the workers. I'd come in, get my work orders, and I'd go out there, and I'd come back in and out the office. But my best spot was actually training. I brought my team in at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we trained from 7 to 7:45 on customer service, sales, upselling, all the things that we're hearing today in our marketplace today. Yeah. My guys were there. Now, no air conditioning contractor ever brought their company, their people in, that early. And we were on the streets at 8 o'clock. I'll give you another one of the little things that helped me grow my business. Because when I sold it, I had over 7,000 customers that had done business with me for 3 years or longer.
Wow.
And that's what made my business worth something to buy, because
Absolutely.
I had the longevity of in that business. They never expected you to ever do business with them again. So you get a client and they'd be gone. So one of the things that I kept hearing was on time. This is a time management concept. Okay. So what I was listening to and hearing was, okay, what the customer wanted was that they needed their air conditioning fixed. Obviously, because it was broken. What they wanted was somebody to come get there on their time schedule.
Right.
And so I talked to the technicians. They go, well, Terry, we can't tell you how long we're going to be there, because we could be there an hour, we could be there 30 minutes, we could be there, 5 hours. We just don't know. And I said, well, I'm going to put a stop to that. Okay, we're going to take the power out of the technician's hands and put it into the dispatcher's hands. And so it took a while to get my crews trained and my people trained. And the way that worked was I could if you called me up, I could say, Dave, I could be at your house between 8 and 10, 9 and 11, 10 and 12. I had a 2-hour span. Okay. And we did that by getting beepers, which that was pretty common in that day. But a lot of companies didn't have two-way radios. So what they did was, and actually I got this from NYPD Blue, a lot of this, because you would dispatch them, and then they had to call back in before they had permission to work. So they could go diagnose the problem, and then they would have to report back and say, okay, I have the part on the truck, and I can get this job finished, and they would give you an estimated time. And they got better at estimating their time. And then we added them, if they were, let's say if it was a bigger job and they didn't have the part, then I had a parts runner, and that parts runner would go get the part, and then he could go to another call and then come back. And we could coordinate this throughout throughout our scheduling day.
So you can move people around just by the sheer fact that you had a 2-hour window and they had to call in, and verify that this is what needs to be done, and this I can do it, and
Mm-hmm.
or I do have the part, or I don't have the part, and you tell them to go, well, go to the next job, and then the runner will, you can go back to the whatever.
Or even I may even decide, like, let's say that it was a compressor change, for an example.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, the technicians made a lot of money for me. They created a lot of work. So I may just say, okay, tell them that we're getting the compressor and that somebody will be there, and we'd know how fast the part runner could get there.
Right.
And we'd tell them, okay, get there. And then I had a crew, my installation crew, that could do compressor changes because I cross-trained most of my people.
Sweet.
And so then we'd send the installation crew out there to do a compressor change. So the person's up and running that day and not having to wait 2 days and that kind of stuff. So this caught on, Dave. And people started sharing my name.
Yeah.
And, somebody would say, well, my air conditioner, call Buccaneer. That would be their first thing. And so when you're listening to the customer, and that, I think we get so tied up in our limited beliefs of this is the way it is. Like when I started advertising outside of the phone book, I'd have other contractors come to me and say, no, you can't do that. You're going to lose your business if you do that. And my phone's ringing off the hook. And I said, well, yeah, don't do it my way.
Right.
They said, well, so what was secret was, well, because all the supportive advertising caused the person to see me when they opened the phone book.
Right. Yeah. It's like you're driving them to your website.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And just other little things so I developed this little thing, a little saying, and that saying, Dave, is study what others do and do none of it.
Yeah.
Because they're probably not doing it correctly.
Yeah,
so
I agree,
there's
100%.
There's a better way, in most cases anyway. I'm not saying some of the old stuff does still work, but
yeah, and we've moved away from it. I say to a lot of guys, I'll say, well, what did you do when you first started? Well, I did this, this, and this. And I go, and business is slow. How was business when you did this, this, and this? He said, it was awesome. I said, did you ever think about going back to the beginning?
Yeah, exactly. Another thing I did that was, so to speak, against the grain was if you answered the phone, and I had designated phone answers like first, your second, your third type thing.
Okay.
And but each one of the people that answered the phone, they were responsible to pick the call up on no more than the third ring. The goal was to get it on the second ring. Okay, and that was a training. We had to train on that, and then they had a tick sheet by their phone, and they had to tell me where that call came from.
Okay.
And as soon as an advertising concept didn't work, we just scratched it. We'd pull it out of the rotation and try something else.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's listening to both sides, and I think that's where a lot of businesses starting up, they listen to the guy that says, well, we've been doing it this way for 25 years. Why do we have to change? So what I do now is engage in a conversation with people about, let's find the lowest level of skill that we can train. And I got that from, you don't hire winners, you hire potential winners. And if you can get somebody to come on board that can do the technical work, now they still have to do the technical work, sure, but are they willing to be able to adapt to your culture?
I think in today's market, that's the most important thing.
Exactly. And my organizational chart. So like I mentioned to you, I created an operations manual. I had a development plan, and I still use this today, 25 years later, 30 years later. I'm still using the same basic concept of the business development. It's 5 pages long, and it spells out it's never at any time has it not solved a problem within the organization. Then you figure out all the tasks that have to be done, and that all those tasks with your priorities turn out to be your strategic plan. And then of course you have to have a goal. And I think a year-long plan now is too long. So my system is about 90-day program. So in the 90 days, you evaluate your priorities, you evaluate your tasks, how well you performed on them, and you score them. It's not a emotional thing. It's task driven that you can measure it. And if your priorities and your money and your task all line up with the same, you score them separately. And if they all line up within a half a point of each other, then you've executed that quarter. As long as it's above a 3.75, I use a 5. Number 5 is the top. But as long as you're above a 4 in all those categories, you've executed your plan correctly. And then you reset your yearly goal, then chunk it back down to a quarter, and then you embark again. And then you have to have your tasks spelled out, so everybody and who's responsible for what task. And then you have to have checklists. So in case Sally doesn't show up for work and she's responsible for making a bank deposit, then you don't rely on what you think, because it has to fall into certain protocols or infrastructure part. And you follow that. And you have to have your budget and performing. You have to forecast your budget. You have to forecast your expenses. You have to forecast your money coming in, so you can stay on track. So if you, like you mentioned earlier, if you're failing in marketing, then you're not getting enough calls, then you better start putting some effort towards that and reshifting your team. It's like a football team. If you get weak, you strengthen up that area. And then you have to have a policies and procedures, or a set of rules that you govern your business by. And this is one thing I had a hard time with in my air conditioning business, was the laying out the rules. And one of the rules was that you had to call at the end of the day. My dispatcher, then it turned out to be 2 dispatchers, but they actually had to call each customer and find out how well the service was. And let me tell you, think about that was never done. And no, they were scared to death. I said, look, if they're going to yell at us, let us yell at us today, not tomorrow.
That's so counterintuitive to the way a lot of guys do business. They go do the job. And then, because I always, in the past have sent out a survey sheet, because, I do painting and I'll talk with them and stuff like that. And people go, well, aren't you afraid of what they'll say? And I go, I hope not. I want to know. I said, I want to know whether I did a good job, whether I did an okay job, did a fair job. I said, because they spent good money with me, and I want to make sure that I exceeded or met their expectations. But not only that, I want to know so I can make their next expenditure with me better, or the next customers better, because it's my responsibility. It's not just to take their money, it's to give them the best service and the best job, so that they'll keep coming back. They'll become what I call raving fans. And if you can do that today and cut all that stuff out, then today you have a raving fan instead of a complaining one.
Perfect. And I did this when I was in the car business as well, because all the car guys, they want ups. When I left the car business, I was selling 22 to 25 cars a month, and I very seldom took a floor up, because I had repeat and referral business that was glad to do it. But yeah. I found a way to make even that work in that business. And to me, referring, I think you would agree with me, referral and repeat business, easier business. You don't have to do half the work as far as selling or, convincing them to do business with you, because and even today I teach that in the sales process. I have a direct, and that's part of the operations manager's direct marketing. I'm not a big fan of mass marketing, unless you got tons of money, but in the direct marketing concept, I want these people to ask questions. I want them to realize that the sales process starts after you close the customer. Most people think the sales process starts when you engage with the customer first time.
So true. It's do you know Dean Jackson?
No, I don't know that name.
look him up when you get a chance. He's
Okay.
brilliant. His philosophy is there's 3 steps to the sales process. There's the before the sale, there's the during the sale, and then there's the after the sale. And he says the most profitable part of the sale is the after the sale, the original sale.
Exactly.
Because that's where your lifetime value comes in.
Do you know? Yeah, I'm sure you've heard of Keller Williams. Okay. Do you know after you're the buyer, they're representing you at the buyer's table, you buy the home from them, from their agent. Do you know what their requirement is for the first year after you've bought the home from them? The touches that you are required to make?
No.
33.
33 the first year. Wow.
The first year.
That's stalking. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I've had, I spent some time in the real estate business, and they said that can't be. And I said, well, really, when you think about it, you can talk to them about their anniversary, their children's, this, that, and the other. There's plenty of reasons. But what you're saying and concurring here is, so because most people are not going to give a referral until they really trust you. This is one of the success stories in the air conditioning business. First of all, you got paid 2%. This protected them, so if they had to go to another call. If you sold a part, you got 2% of what that customer did for the longevity of that call.
Okay.
So he could call 5 times. Every time he called, if Dave was the first person out there, then Dave gets 2%. I also implemented a program for a thank you letter for $5. Now, again, you got to remember this is the 80s, and $5 was a lot back then. And this was hush money. But if you could get a client or a customer to write a thank you letter about you, then I gave you $5.
Oh,
and one technician. It was a technician.
Yeah.
And
okay.
So one of the technicians came to me and said, Terry, it's no fair. Mario asked for letters. And I said, I don't care if he asks for letters. It doesn't mean he's going to get one. He can ask for them all he wants. And Mario would come in a lot, and in the beginning he said, did I get a letter? And I go, nope. And he goes, well, I asked for it. And I said, well, the customer didn't send it. I said, you need to up your game a little bit.
Yeah, you don't leave you don't leave the
up
house
your
without
game.
it. Yeah. I know.
So he finally got to a level where he knew what kind of service he had to get those letters.
That's awesome. I know there's a carpet cleaner out in one of the girls that does my social media. She had a carpet cleaner out in Colorado. And before his crew left, they would have the customer do a testimonial on Facebook, and they'd hand her a $10 bill.
Okay. Another one, especially in contracting, because I'm guessing that your audience is a lot of contractors. Sure. This is one that is real easy for your contractors. I'll give them a little nugget here. What we used to do is we used to take and we had these door hangers made up, and we would hang door hangers on the homes beside the home we were there,
right,
and a few of the homes across the street, just within reach. 8 or 10 of them. Yeah. And we just service your neighbor across, or we just service your neighbor. If you need any help or whatever, boom, boom, nice little thing. And just it takes about 5 minutes while the mechanic is getting the bill made out. Right. The helper can run across the street and flyer the home.
Yeah, it makes so much sense.
And we miss those little opportunities because we're just not paying attention to the opportunity just right. That's part of my direct mail, my direct marketing concept is get more in touch with the neighborhood. And then another one is, stay within a 5-mile radius of where you are. Now, that's kind of hard to do if you're a service business. I get it. But if you focus your energy on 5-mile radius, customers are going to stay within that 5-mile radius.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. And
I know guys that will chase, and they'll chase the dollar.
Yeah.
And not think about the profit. They'll just chase the dollar. Me, I want to chase the profit. So
good for you.
If it's in my goal has been 5 miles. I will go out on occasion for longer, but it has to be worth amount of X amount of dollars in that time period for me to even consider.
I've even told a client in the air conditioning business, I'll be glad you're home, but I can tell you right now, this particular one was the ductwork everything had to go underneath the house. And I told the guy, I said, I'll be glad to do it. I said, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to be much higher than any other company. You're going to get bids for people a lot lower. But I just cannot do it unless I make sure that my guys are taken care of. I'm going to have to. They're not going to want to crawl under here, so I'm going to have to incentivize them. And another thing that I did too, Dave, was, remember back in those days, it was all about the phone book. And when you're buying a full page ad in that phone book back in those days, you were pretty strong. And plus, I had to buy several full page ads to make all this work.
Yeah.
But what I did was, first of all, I noted that because I was in Town and Country area, the specific area, most of your listeners might not know that, but in that one area, then most of my calls came from that area. So that was an 88 prefix. Okay. So then I thought, well, let me put it over here. Let me see what happens if I put some phone number in for 935 or 93 area. And I started getting calls from there. So what I did was I picked out the areas of town that had air conditioners that were over 5 years old and moving closer to 7 to 12 years old, so like Carrollwood and the different areas. And I got phone numbers. And back in those days, we had call forwarding, but you had to actually go to the house. You had to have a residence or someplace. And I called my friends up and I say, listen, I need to drop a phone line in your house. And so they did, and if the storm came in, I have to go reprogram it. But the phones would, and the phone and the ad, I put it side by side instead of up and down. I put the ads side by side, so my page was half page on two parts of the phone book, and I had 8 numbers lined up across the bottom. And the appearance was that I had 8 offices in Hillsborough County.
Cool. Yeah, perception is everything.
And so, again, it's taking time to put that vision out there and get away from the technical. What I find, and you probably would agree with me on this, we start out with this vision of what we want. And, of course, the vision changes. But we start out, and then we get into the managerial side. So we buy all the tools and things we need. And then we shift over into the technical aspect of our job, and that's really what we've done. We created a job. And then we get stuck over there. And we forget the vision, and we forget the managing the budgets and the action plans and things like that. And we get sucked into this world of 12 to 14 hours a day doing technical stuff. So my advice to your listeners is, if you're spending more than 40 to 48 hours in technical, doing the technical part of your job, then let's take another look at ourselves. We should be spending no more than 48 hours in the technical side, 6 to 8 hours in the managing of our business, and 2 to 4 hours a week should be in the vision side of it.
Right. Yeah, I agree. This has really been cool. I love even back then, and I said as you were talking, you were basically, the words that I use. You were creating the wow factor for your customers because you were willing to meet them on their terms so that they could do business with you instead of, I don't know how many people that I hear that have argued with their contractor because, well, they don't want to do it this way, or they don't want to do it this way. And I go, you should see, this is really funny. I'll go and walk up to somebody and they'll say, well, I want it done this way. I said, okay. And they'll go, what? And I go, you're the boss.
That's just what I was going to say. I have a
Yeah, you're the boss. And they go, I had one lady, and she just stared at me. And I go, what's the problem? She goes, no one has ever said that to me before.
Right. One of my largest, one of my longest clients, over 7 years that he and I have been together. He's coming down. I go up there every quarter to conduct his quarterly meetings. But he's a general contractor in Chicago. And we have taken, when I first got with him, he was at $1.2 million. his goal this year is $12 million.
Wow, that's awesome.
And his 5-year dream is $90 million.
Wow.
And he just took on a task that, again, just thinking outside the box. The Napleton Group is a large automobile dealership up in that area that do Aston Martin and the bigger cars, the fancier cars.
Yeah.
And this guy wanted to put 2 antique cars into the 6th floor as like in the waiting room.
Yeah.
Now I'm talking about full cars. Now I'm not talking about replicas. I'm talking about actual cars. So Stefan was a little leery about that. And I said, we can figure it out with your ability, your group, your techs. And so what he did, he was able to, he had to remove all the glass, type thing. He had to create the opening.
Yeah.
Okay. And it come down to a Saturday because he had to close off the streets and, all the cranes and things that were involved. And so the fire marshal comes out because permitting and all the stuff that goes with it. Fire marshal comes out and refuses to sign off on the deal because the gas tanks are still in the vehicles. And so he could smell gas. So Stefan, thinking on his feet, says, no problem. If that's the only problem we have, I'll have the gas tanks removed. So he just car dealership. That wasn't a hard jump. Yeah. Did that. Got the cars in there. They're in their thing. Everything's perfect. And I coach with 8 of his people. 8, Dave. Not just him, but he has me now working with 8 of his employees.
Cool. He's got a vision to grow his company, and he knows who his key players are, and he's going to help you. You're part of his team.
Well, and also the fact that businesses don't create career paths. See, one of the easiest way for you to grow is by getting your people to understand that you have a career path, and you do that through your organizational chart. And you were just talking about your customer. Well, if you looked at my organizational chart, it is upside down totally. The customer is at the top, and everybody, it's communication channels. And the lowest person on the totem pole is the president, CEO, whoever you want.
Right.
So,
and customer that pays your wage every day.
Plus the fact that if you we did this at Radio Shack, when we empower the worker bees to make decisions within a guidelines, you set up the perimeters, but when you give them power to make decisions, what happens is you free up your middle management people to actually work on training programs and work on other things that can cause the business to go forward. The upper management is only supposed to be focused on the vision. And I tell CEOs all the time, I had this one lady a few years back. She said, I got my website, getting ready to order my business cards. Should I put CEO or president on my card? And I said, neither. Yeah. She said, what? And I said, if you get in a conversation with a CEO or a president, they're going to expect you to be able to talk to them. And if you can't speak their language, then they're going to realize that you're not who you say you are. I said, your company's name is Vaden Incorporated, so and they're going to see your name as Sarah Vaden. They're going to get it. Yeah. Okay, so you don't have to exploit that. But and then the other thing, like we talked earlier, and we're probably getting close to the time here, but when you build a business like this with career opportunities and career places for these people to stay, they want to stay. And when they do. That's exactly how I sold my business. I sold it to my employees.
Wow, that's a novel idea because a lot of times we look outside the source instead of looking in to the people who have invested their lives and everything in it to see if they want it first.
Well, and 2, a lot of times the owner of the business, because they decided to become Tom Jones Roofing. Okay. Yeah. Well, and whatever they establish, they can't sell their business because the business, when they leave the business, there is no business.
Right, because you're buying a personality. Absolutely.
So this, mine was Buccaneer because I again, was thinking outside the box.
Sure.
With Buccaneer. I figured I'd get 6 months of advertising, and it turned out I got a year's worth of advertising. But these guys were bad. They were terrible. If you remember the early Bucks, they, I'd get phone calls where the person say, "You're not like the Bucks, right?" No.
That's pretty awesome. Hey, Terry, this has really been awesome. Just so much information and nuggets that you shared with us today. How can our listeners get a hold of you?
Thank you, Dave. The easiest place is terryogburn.com, Terry, Ogburn, OGBURN.com. And I also have a free gift for your listeners if they'd like to take me up on it. That gift is I will give you 1 hour of my time face-to-face. We'll use GoToMeeting, and I will help you through your time management issues. We never have enough time to do anything, and I have developed a system that will help your listeners through this process.
Awesome. That is awesome. So will that be on your website, or will you send a link over and I'll put it in the show notes?
Actually, just they can give you my email address. It's WTOGBURN@AOL.com. All they have to do is send me an email requesting they heard it on your show. I will then email. We'll get in touch through email, and we'll coordinate a time, and we'll make it come true. They can also enter their information on my website in the capture box. It's not meant for newsletter. They're not subscribing to a newsletter no matter what it says. I don't do that. But if they go on my website and put their information in there and tell me they want to take me up on the time management offer, I'll reach out to them that way.
Cool. This has really been awesome. And I think the time management offer is awesome because I know that, just this last week I've done a bunch of stuff where I've actually laid it out for myself day by day in the certain hours that I want to get it done. Otherwise, because I know like a lot of guys, like I've got like 5 books that I really want to read, and some things I want to do, but I just get overwhelmed with what I want to do, so I just broke them down to days. Okay, this day I read this book or listen to this book. This day I listen to this book, and and believe me, it's that little bit has made my life so much easier.
Well, I'll be glad to share my program with you as well. So if you'd like to
Awesome.
spend some time with me,
I would, and I will send it over as very soon.
Sorry about that.
No, that's no problem. I'll cut that out there. Let me.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Contractors Secret Weapon Podcast with Dave Negri. We would love to hear your comments about this episode, so visit us online at www.contractorssecretweapon.com and let us hear your thoughts. If you are listening via iTunes, please leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive, the more other contractors will benefit from this show. Thank you, and see you next time here on the Contractors Secret Weapon Podcast.